My name is Judith Cobb. I'm a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, certified iridologist, and certified comprehensive iridology instructor through the International Iridology Practitioners Association. I would love to have a show of hands as we are starting. How many of you are familiar with constitutional iridology, which is very different from Jensenian, very different from Robert Morse, very different from behavioral. I would just love to know, yes or no, are you familiar with constitutional iridology? That will give me a good base to know how to gear the material that I would like to share with you today. Or if constitutional iridology, if the idea of constitutional iridology is brand new to you, I want you to put that in here too, new. Just put the word new if it's a new concept. All righty. And we've got lots of people joining us. We've got Valerie and Daniela and Deborah and Patricia and Tamara with us on the webinar. So good to have you with us. And we've got lots of people joining us on Facebook, and Instagram is still populating. So we are going to get started. But again, I want to know, is constitutional iridology new to you, or is it something you're experienced with? Okay, and Patricia's saying she learned constitutional in her course. Excellent, excellent. That's very good. Very good. Patricia says this is new to her. Thank you for sharing that, Patricia. So I've got two Patricias going on, one on the webinar and one on Facebook. So if I'm saying Patricia and you go, I didn't say that, you know I'm talking about the other Patricia, okay? Just so that you know that I'm not losing my marbles. Not today anyways. Might in the near future, but, and Kelly says this is new. Dee says this is new. Great, great. Ooh, I love this because this means that we're going to share some really good information with you that is going to be very educational for you. And we've also got someone joining from the phone, and I wish I knew the name. So that is perfect. Alrighty, so let's get into this. Okay, you know, when we do anything that's health oriented, we have to do a disclaimer. This information is meant for your education only. It's not meant to diagnose or prescribe. Certainly the amount of information I'm presenting today is not going to qualify you to be a practicing iridologist, so don't go around pretending to be one if you don't have the right training. You are responsible for any results, good or bad, that result from using this information. And we've got Kimberly joining us from MA. Is that Maine in the US, Kim? I don't know all my US abbreviations. I can, on a good day, I can list 45 of the states, but I don't know all the abbreviations for them. All right, so welcome. Welcome, welcome. Again, my name is Judith Cobb. I'm a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, certified iridologist, certified comprehensive iridology instructor. I have been in this industry for 4 decades, just over 4 decades. And in those years, I have studied several different styles of iridology with several different iridology instructors. So I've learned the Jensenian, I've learned constitutional, I've done the Rayid style of iridology, and you know, back in the day before we had webinars, when the courses were delivered by photo slides and cassette tapes. Okay, so dating myself, does that tell you when I got some of my training? So grateful to have the internet. And Kim is actually in Massachusetts. So glad you are with us today, Kim. All right, so I've already introduced myself. Adding to that, I am the wife of one. This, I was mentioning to Val from Devon at the outset of this, that I know where Devon is because my husband and I spent our 30th anniversary in Devon 11 years ago. So it was a lot of fun. I am the wife of one for almost 41 years now, mom of 7, grandma of 8. And today, as we go through this information, I'm going to try to keep an eye on all of the chat boxes, both on the webinar and on Facebook. And I'm encouraging you to ask questions and make comments. Now, obviously, in a webinar that's going to be as short as this one is, I can't go into great depth, but I'll do what I can to answer your questions about the topic at hand. I've been doing iridology for all of the years that I've been a holistic practitioner, and with all of the different styles that I've studied, I have found that constitutional is the most accurate. It is the most useful in a clinical setting for both myself and for my clients. And that is why for the last 30 years, I've been focusing on it. I have found that with constitutional iridology, I can do faster assessments. I am far more accurate in my work than I ever was with Jensenian. I can develop a better and faster rapport with my clients, and that's really important. And it eliminates the need for an intake form. Now, I obviously still have my clients sign a release form or an informed consent form outlining the scope of practice, what I can do, what I can't do, so that they know what they are in for. That almost sounded like I'm going to be hurting them in some way, but they know what they're signing up for when they are with me, so that they know I cannot diagnose, I cannot prescribe. And that's a really important thing for us to remember as practitioners and for our clients to know when we are working with them. With constitutional iridology, as we're going to talk about a little bit today, constitutional iridology teaches us about inherent potentials. It doesn't teach us absolutes. It doesn't show us exactly what's happening in the body right now, but it helps us to understand where the strengths and weaknesses are. Oh, hi, Peggy. Good to see you on Instagram. Thanks for being there. Constitutional shows us where the inherent potentials are. So when we see particular markings or particular tendencies, and we match that up with our client's symptoms, and we find out what our client is doing for their health, that's where iridology is a real power to us, because it gives us that deeper understanding. I can see markings in someone's eyes, but my client has no symptoms. And the markings are not relevant to why my client is coming in. So I'm not going to pay attention to those markings in a way that my client is going to recognize just yet. Those markings may still inform some of what I want to do with my client, but I'm not going to talk about those markings with my client at that point in time. I'm going to keep my assessment focused on what my client's needs are right now. It's so important that we not get sidetracked, that we not overwhelm our clients. So let's look at this. Here we have some pictures. I'm going to show you pictures taken with some different cameras because I want you to really see this. Now, dang, it looks like we have lost our connection to the internet for a moment. That is not a good thing. And yeah, we're having problems playing this video is right, Facebook. And same with Instagram. Okay, so for those of you who are with me still on the webinar, give me a thumbs up or give me a 1 if we've still got you on the webinar. If the webinar has not pooped out on me, just give me a 1 so I know to keep going. All righty, fabulous. Thank you so much. So what I'll do is I will, if I need to repost this, I'm just going to comment to them. If it doesn't reconnect, I'll post a link to the replay. Okay. Alrighty, so we've got some issues with tech. So these are eye pics taken with an 8 megapixel camera back when 8 megapixels was the cat's meow. Okay, so that's dating things a little bit here. And what I want you to look at very carefully, because we're talking today about how eyes change and how they don't change and why some people think eyes change. Okay, so that's our box that we're going to focus on today. So these pictures of a man who's in his 40s, again, taken with an 8 megapixel digital camera that had an incandescent ring flash. Now, those of you who've studied iridology would look at these big dark areas and you would talk about how they were rarefied, how they have low vitality, things like that. And right, we would talk about these as being rarefied. Now, Shortly after I took these photos, I upgraded my camera equipment to a 24 megapixel camera. And I upgraded the lighting system from an incandescent ring flash to an LED flash that was designed specifically for iridology. These are the exact same eyes. Okay, so this is 18 months later. I assure you this gentleman did not do a cleanse. What I want to know is, what do you see that is different? What is different here? What is different about these pictures? One is, I want you to give me some comments here in the chat box or in the comments box. What is different for those of you who are back with me on Instagram? So glad you're back. Let me flip back to the previous image so you can see this is the original ones. And Tamara's asking the difference between the two eyes or between the photos. Between the photos. So what is the difference you see between these photos, this set of photos, and this set of photos? Again, same person, taken 18 months apart. What differences do you see photographically? Oh, so it looks like Facebook is back. They're just not showing the video on the screen for some reason on my version of this. Okay, so there's more detail in a second. The color appears different. Awesome, awesome. So why do you think the color is different? Why do you think? Yolette says the second set is much clearer. Yeah, clarity, yeah, much clearer. Why do you think the color's different? Oh, Tamara, I love you. She's on the webinar with us, and she is saying the lighting, the camera quality, absolutely. That is the only reason the images are actually different. Here is one eye side by side. The only difference, Peggy, love it. She's saying the lighting on Instagram. The only differences here are the tech. And yet you will see people online saying from the image that you see on the left to the image on the right, oh, wow, he's done some cleansing. Look at how much stronger his body is. Look at all the integrity. Oh man, he's really, seeing some differences. And it's like, no, this is completely about the tech. All right. That is something that we need to recognize, is that we actually need a better question here. And the question is, what changes can we see in the irides, and what do those changes mean? Because we do know that we can see changes in the irides, right? We know that, but it's not the changes that we've been taught by the old school iridologists, because those are all based on tech. I've actually had this argument on Instagram with someone who has studied with an iridology instructor who has a very big name. I'm not going to mention any names here. And this fellow is sending me images saying, these pictures were taken by an iridologist. And I'm looking at them and I'm going, they were taken by different cameras. So you cannot make the claim of before and after. You cannot talk about cleansing because it doesn't work like that. All right. And so again, I've been an iridologist for 40 years. The first 10 of those, I was the type of iridologist who said, you do a cleanse, your eyes will change. I was about to throw in the towel on iridology because I'll tell you, I put my clients through some pretty intense cleanses and never once did we see a change. Their photos looked exactly the same from before and after, and that's back even before digital. We were shooting print images back then. And so it was about that time that I was getting super, super frustrated that I decided that I actually didn't decide. I was blessed with the opportunity and doors opened for me to start learning constitutional iridology. And the more I studied constitutional, the more I understood how what I learned originally was incorrect. The more excited I got because it worked. It helps me to assess my clients much more accurately. So here's what we need to know. Pigment may be acquired or it may become more dense, but pigment does not go away. So when we look at eyes, like this, for instance, this was, and again, we're looking at the same eye taken with different cameras. So the color differences are all in the tech, right? We've all agreed on that. This was actually my very first original print film camera. This is my most recent 24 megapixel camera with a lighting setup that is not the one I'm currently using. It's the one before this. All right, so we've got some different tech here. This picture was taken about 40 years ago. And what I really want you to look at is what is down here. What is down here? Because when we look at the picture that was done recently, can you see that this person has acquired some pigment? Same eye, if we look for markings, you know, we see we've got this coming up, we've got this coming up. They're slightly not exactly both straight up because these are handheld cameras. We've got this little patch of stuff here, and it is still here. It looks different because the pupil is much smaller. And when the pupil is much smaller, different lacunae and some markings get stretched out. They look narrower. And so it's not that they've healed, it's that the pupil size has changed. All right, but you can see that he has acquired pigment. When we understand the pigment color, and this is inherent, this is genetic, this is like you've got a genetic code that says when your hair is going to start turning gray, when you're going to start getting wrinkles around your eyes and, you know, smile and laugh lines. That's all genetic. You can speed it up by poor diet, poor lifestyle, too much time out in the sun and the elements. You can slow it down by protecting your skin, you know, wearing a wide brimmed hat. You can slow down your wrinkles. You know, eat enough antioxidant kinds of food, you can maybe slow down your hair going gray, but you can't stop them. Those are things that are programmed into your genes. This pigment deposition is programmed into his genes. And what it tells us, the color tells us which organ is programmed, inherently programmed to begin having some little hissy fits. And the placement of the pigment tells us which organs are going to suffer the brunt of those hissy fits. All right. And so this is super, super important to note that what we've got here is the acquisition of pigment. This fellow could fast and cleanse until the cows come home, assuming we had cows to come home, and this pigment is not going away. These images again are the very same eye. Again, the very old camera and a much newer 24 megapixel camera. Notice some things like some of the markings that are inside the collarette. And notice that they are here. They look a little bit different shape because the pupil is much smaller. Notice the pupil shape and the similarities between the image on the left and the image on the right. So these are the same image. The difference is the incandescent light was not as bright, so the pupil stayed larger. The LED light is much brighter, so the pupil gets smaller. There's about 22 years of difference between these two images. As we look at the newer image, can you see the pigments that have been acquired? When we look at the older image, we do not have a pigment sitting right here that we have here. Come up here, you see there's a little tiny rarefaction with a pigment below it. Tiny rarefaction, no pigment. Coming over here to about the 430 mark, we have a pigment that has been acquired. Coming over to the 430 mark, which actually tucks us in right in here, there is no pigment acquired over here. And so what we see is these pigments have also been acquired over time. This is common. It's like picking up or developing an age spot on your skin. There is some inherent predisposition behind all of this. So again, the color of the pigment, and this is something that we teach in the Dynamic Iridology Assessment Program, the color of the pigment tells us which organ is programmed to be out of balance. The placement of the pigment tells us which organ is going to suffer because of the imbalance. I think of this as being like a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. The 5-year-old wants to make the 3-year-old scream and get the 3-year-old into trouble. So the 5-year-old is the color of the pigment, and he's poking the 3-year-old. That's where the pigment is sitting. That's the organ reaction field in which the pigment is sitting to make the 3-year-old scream, right? And so I have children, right? So that is where the analogies come from. So again, we need to recognize that this is acquired not because of diet, not because of toxic exposure, not because of medications. This is actually one of my sons. My children, this son had no vaccinations. He might have had antibiotics once in his life, maybe when he had his wisdom teeth removed, but he's never had any other medications in his lifetime. And so for someone, and our diet's quite clean, for someone to say this is from toxic exposure, from drugs, or from like too much antibiotic or things like that is garbage, because he's had none of that whatsoever. We drink purified water. You know, we do a good job of working with this. Another change we see is what we call a Lypemic Diathesis. So that is this white ring in the eye. This is inherent. It's not actually in the iris, it's actually in the cornea, but it is also an inherent marking. It tells us that this person likely has a liver enzyme imbalance that can correlate to how the liver metabolizes carbohydrates. Now, we've got to qualify this a little bit. If we see this in a person who is under the age of 20, we've got serious work to do, because there are imbalances that in that body that we're going to ask him to go to the doctor and get some lab tests done. And there's things there that we want to absolutely get in the way of developing. We often see this in people who are over the age of 60. And in those people, this can simply be aging of the cornea. So we need to ask personal and family history questions. So we aren't just going to look at this and go, as old school iridologists would, oh my goodness, you've got hardening of the arteries, you're blocking your arteries, you know, you've got to take care of that. And if we do enough cleansing, that's going to go away. It's not going away. Again, you can cleanse until the cows come home, and you're not going to get this out of here. And we don't care if it goes out of the eye. We care about the quality of what's going on in other organs in the body. And we want to ask the questions to determine if those organs are at risk because of this. So we need to ask questions to understand the root cause. So important to understand the root cause. We can see the pupil shape change. See how this is so flat up here? The pupil shape correlates strongly to spinal alignment and to nerve feed in the body. So when we see a flattening in the pupil, it says that the spine likely has had a long-standing subluxation, and this person is going to need more than one treatment of whatever kind to restore balance to the spine. So, you know, if the person does chiropractic, they're going to have to do that a lot. I always suggest coupling that with massage, because chiropractic may align things, but the muscles will pull things out again. So very important that we get the muscles rebalanced. It's going to take more than one massage and one chiro adjustment, or one Dorn adjustment, or one osteopathy treatment, or whatever. It's been there long enough to mess up the nerve feed, to impact the nerve feed. This is going to take a while to correct. So it's so important. Hello, Healer on a Mission, and Bivins Interior, and Kate. It's good to see you on Instagram. We need to be aware that this can change. Enough of the right homework over a long enough period of time, the nerve feed will correct and the spine will realign and the pupil will become round again. What we see change much more frequently is the blood vessels in the iris. So as we look at this, we've seen this eye before, if you remember that pigment down at the bottom there. This picture was taken in 1997. And what I want you to notice here is that we've got this blood vessel coming along here. Okay, and we've got this blood vessel coming along here that are very, very faint. When we come into, this one is faint down here, this one is bolder. When we come into here, this bold one has pretty much disappeared. You'll also see we've got this little bit of a blood vessel up in this corner, which has become quite a bit more prominent and quite a bit longer. Okay, so this is telling us that there is something dynamic brewing. There's a hot spot. When we see this down here and we see how much bolder this has become, this says dynamically there is a hot spot. So again, when we're doing sclerology, this is very dynamic. Where the iris is inherent, the sclera is dynamic and situational. And you know that. If you've ever had a good hard cry, you know how the blood vessels just get you get bloodshot eyes, right? And 2 hours later, things are settled down. The sclera is very, very dynamic. And so as we look at this, what we see here is that whatever's going on up here with this one is getting worse, but whatever's going on here seems to be improving. Whatever's going on, and I keep getting that thing popping up the bottom, whatever's coming in here is developing in a way we don't want to. Now, we can ascertain which organs these are teaching us about, and we can do some major interventions with diet and supplements and lifestyle, and we will, with time, see these disappear. Now, these were done in 2018. The disappearance of these is not instantaneous, so we haven't reshot new eye photos yet, but I see this person regularly because he's my husband. And I sit across, sit next to him at the dining room table, a couple times a day. And I see this and I realize that we got a lot more work to do. We're working on it, but we've got a lot more work to do. All right, so that will change over time. And as we see it change, I will take photos and we'll do a before and after with that. But again, it's not going to be instant at all. So in order to do sclerology well, we need to be doing repeated images. So images every 6 to 12 months if the person is actually doing the homework that we have suggested for them. We used to talk about healing lines appearing, that if we had a marking like this, that had this kind of fiber showing up in it, that these were healing lines. We now understand that that is not true. We now understand that the iris is made up of layers of fiber called trabeculae, and that because it has layers, when we have an opening like this and we are seeing this, we are simply looking at fibers that are down a layer. These didn't grow, they didn't develop, they've always been there. And so these are not an indication of healing at all. We're simply looking at a deeper layer in the iris. Bivens Interior, you're very welcome. I'm happy to share this knowledge with you. We've also used to think that these markings that we call lacunae would change as well, that healing was indicated when these got smaller. But again, I want you to look at these images. These are 3 images of the same person. Hi, Debbie, it's good to see you on Instagram. Same image. Notice we've got 2 different sets of tech happening here. And notice the size of the pupil. Remember what we said earlier, that what happens is when the pupil gets smaller, the trabeculae stretch out. They get pulled and stretched. And so what happens is that a shape like this, a lacuna like this, when the pupil gets smaller, this iris, this section of iris is going to get wider. As it gets wider, it pulls the trabeculae, and that makes the lacuna look narrower. Does that make sense? Okay, these fibers don't appear and disappear. They don't change placement. They don't move around in the eye, but they can get stretched out a little bit like this. This is not healing. This is just a change in the size of the pupil. And I remember, telling people, oh, look at the healing way back in the beginning. Look at the healing. So good that that lacuna is getting smaller. And it wasn't until I actually had different cameras and looked at old photos with an older camera with less light versus new images with a newer camera that was brighter, that I actually could see, Kelly, thanks for telling me that this makes sense, that I could actually see that it hasn't changed. It's the width of the iris because of the pupil getting smaller. So if that's all making sense, that is a good thing. That's a good thing. So Patricia says, is it possible to add at the explanation of the pigments, their location and organs, please? Patricia, we do not have time to do that here. That is in the course. That is in the full course. And so to get into that kind of detail, that is a 40-hour course, not a 35-minute webinar. My apologies for that, but certainly you're welcome to register for the course. We're just going to take a moment now and introduce the course to you so that you can see if it's a fit for you. The course is called the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System for Holistic Health Practitioners. And Bivens Interior says, lighting makes a difference, dilation of the pupil. It absolutely does. And there are so many people who do not recognize that. It's actually kind of frustrating. At any rate, the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System is the only live online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. I find that what happens is too many holistic practitioners see their client for the first time, send them off, and then the practitioner spends 2 or 3 or 4 hours creating a program. Then they either email the program to the client or they meet with the client one more time to deliver the program. But the practitioners are not getting paid for the hours they spend creating their programs. And that is, in my opinion, very, very sad, because that means they're barely making minimum wage most of the time. The purpose of the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System program is not only to teach iridology, but to teach you how to use it in a practicum setting, in a practical setting with your clients, so that you can actually create your client programs in literally a few minutes. So if you're running 1 hour sessions with your clients or 90-minute sessions, in that time frame, you can create the program your client needs to take them to the next level in their health. So you're developing their program, you're giving them their program one step at a time. As they do that, they become very successful, and they actually want to come back to find out, well, what is the next step? I've done the first 2 or 3 things, very targeted, specific things you asked me to do. I'm feeling the benefit of that. What comes next? And so it takes us often 4 to 6 appointments to develop the full program. But every step of the way, the client is not feeling overwhelmed and is absolutely able to do the work. Peggy on Instagram says, thank you, Judith. Your teaching is excellent. I have to run. Hugs, would love to, and I would recommend your course. She's one of my grads. Thanks so much, Peggy. Thanks so much. So the goal again is to teach constitutional iridology and how to use it confidently so that you can easily integrate what you already know about nutrition and herbology to confidently create doable client programs in your paid client sessions. So I'm not teaching just what the markings are. I'm teaching you how to use this. Understanding what the markings are is nothing. Nothing. It's something a 5-year-old could learn. But understanding how to use iridology takes more time and more patience to teach than most teachers are willing to invest. But that's what we do in this program. This is Sharon Bimrose. She is a naturopath. She's done the program. She's graduated and certified. She said, I'd already taken naturopathy or iridology as a part of my studies as a naturopath. However, Judith's course in dynamic iridology surpassed my previous training in structure, content delivery, documentation, and support. Iridology has reduced the time required for prioritizing a treatment plan. Without a doubt, it's been a huge game changer to my practice because she used to spend her own time creating protocols and emailing them out and not getting paid for that time, which is really not the way to have a financially successful business. If you would like more information about the course, we are doing an info session on March 1st at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And I am just, for those of you who are with me on the webinar live, I am going to post this registration link in the comments. So if you would like to join me for this, the next course actually starts on April 21st. So if you get registered quickly between March 1st and March 5th, there are some very special bonuses, very special perks that will be available to you that will not be available after March the 5th. So you need to attend the info session that we've just posted the link for in the chat for the webinar. Now, those of you who are with me on Facebook, I will post this link there when we are finished our presentation today, when we're finished this webinar. And those of you who are with me on Instagram, if you would like the link to the webinar for March 1st, just send me a PM and ask for the info webinar link, and I will be sure to send that to you. With that, my friends, are there any other questions that I can answer for you in the 2 or 3 minutes that we have left? It's been so fun having you with me. We've had Mel and Natalie and Paul join us on the webinar. Thanks for being with us. We've had Yolette as well join us on Facebook, and we have had several people with us on Instagram. It's so fun to have all this tech. I am not seeing any more questions come in. Certainly those of you who are in the private Facebook group can post questions as we go later on, and feel free just to PM me with any questions you might have. Look forward to speaking with you soon and hope to see you on March 1st in that webinar. You are so welcome, Bivens Interior. So welcome indeed, and hope to see you on March 1st. Have a fabulous, fabulous, wonderful day, and look forward to seeing you. Have a great day. Bye for now.